Everything on earth has its own time and its own season. There is a time for birth and death, planting and reaping, for killing and healing, destroying and building, for crying and laughing, weeping and dancing, for throwing stones and gathering stones, embracing and parting. There is a time for finding and losing, keeping and giving, for tearing and sowing, listening and speaking. There is also a time for love and hate, for war and peace.
So what is reconciliation? And why is it so important to understand the gospel, the true gospel? Because the mainstream doctrines teach us that Adam was the first human being and he was the father of all races. And this is just a grave error. When you look up Strong's 119 and 120, you can see that the Hebrew word Adam means to be of a ruddy complexion, able to blush. It's the history book. The whole scriptures, it's about the history of the Caucasian people. So the church teaches us, because Adam is the father of all races and humanity fell in the garden, that means that the reconciliation was about reconciling all races back and restoring the garden in Eden. But the story in Genesis never mentions humanity falling. It's talking about the man Adam and his wife Eve were sent away from the garden. They could not have access to the tree of life because they ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So in this video I want to make a point that the evil is not about races, but the evil is within our own race, but that other races can adopt evil doctrines from within our race. So can they also adopt good stuff that comes from within our race. Also the doctrine that Noah had 3 sons, 1 Chinese, 1 Negroid and 1 Caucasian. That idea is just totally ludicrous. The Bible tells us clearly that Noah was perfect in his genealogy all the way back to Adam. He did not intermix with other creatures. So the story is about the 3 sons of Noah who spread out over the earth, which means that land in the Middle East. Right? Japhet went into the north, south of Europe and Russia. Shem stayed behind in the Middle East, and Ham went into North Africa. A lot of evidence that the Caucasian people went as far as China and the Americans, all through history, from a few thousand years ago to even 12,000 years ago. But in this video I like to focus on the last 6,000 years, from Adam to Noah and his sons, and what would happen afterwards, and why the white race is now being under a lot of stress and in dire need of salvation. So you must understand that all these families of Noah, through his sons, they started people like the Egyptians, people like the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Canaanites. These were all of the white family. So when we look at the old Babylon, not the Babylon of Nebuchadnezzar, right, that took the Israelites from the southern kingdom away. When we look at the old Babylon, we see that these were still Caucasian people. And within this land, Abraham lived, right? And God called Abraham out of that land because God was going to do something through Abraham. So Abraham was led to the land of Canaan, Canaanites. These were descendants of Ham, right? We know that sons of Ham were going to be cursed because of what Ham did, right? The Hamites were not going to be part of the promise, right? Just like Jacob and Esau. Esau was a white man, but because of his violent nature and intermarrying with those cursed Canaanites, he lost his birthright. And he realized this, and he just sold it away for a bowl of soup. So God was gonna work through Jacob, right? He was renamed Israel. So that's why Yahweh is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So to think that Esau was a totally different race and that Rebekah had two different races in her womb is not true. It was a spiritual matter. It was a matter of the mind. It was a matter of character. Alright? Esau was not gonna be used and not gonna be part of the birthright. The dominion and birthright went to Jacob. But Esau was still Jacob's brother. And Esau married with Canaanites, Hittites, and even with the daughters of Ishmael. But also Ishmael was part of the white family. Even until Muhammad, who claimed to be descendant of Ishmael, but also descendant of Esau, right? Probably Muhammad was a Jew, or at least had Jewish blood, but these were all part of the white family, who later indeed started to intermix with other races. But in that time, the sons of Esau, who became the Edomites, they were still their brothers, the brothers of Jacob. Thou shalt not abhor an Edomite, for he is your brother. In a time, a brother was of the same stock. A brother is not a mental thing, right? If a black person is a Christian, he is not your biblical brother. That's also a new concept. So he is thy brother, for thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian, because there was a stranger in his land. Right? A stranger in Egyptian land does not mean you are of a totally different race. So this biblical story is not about races. It's about the birthright within the white family, the story of Jacob and Esau. So we see that the Edomites, they were so envious and they hated Jacob so much that they sided together with Babylon, and they helped even Babylon get the Israelites out of Judah, out of Jerusalem, into Babylon. Psalm 137. Remember, O Yahweh, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, the day that Jerusalem was taken away by Babylon, and the Edomites shouted out, raise it, even to the foundations thereof. So after Babylon took away the Israelites from Judah, especially Jerusalem, the Edomites moved into the land of the southern kingdom of Judah. Edomites moved in, Canaanites moved in, Babylonians moved in, and this is where the Babylonian religion became predominant in that region. So after 70 years, the Persians, which were still also of the Aryan stock, they brought the Israelites back from Babylon to Jerusalem. So we see that the whole region was still predominantly Babylonian, right? Edom and the southern part of Judah, Idumea called, right? And the true Israelites still kept the law of Moses. So in 126 before Christ, the Maccabees decided to circumcise the Edomites and make them part of Israel, right? They wanted to convert the Edomites into this Hebrewism. But not long after, the Edomites started to take over. Now you had a king, King Herod, who was an Edomite. And of course, he put in place Edomite Pharisees. Right? I'm not saying all Pharisees were Edomites, but you can imagine that an Edomite king would put as much Edomites as he could in high positions. And these Edomite Pharisees, they loved to bring their Babylonian things into the Israelite faith. Jesus called it the traditions of the elders, right? Jesus told them, you are not of my people. You are not of God. For if you were of God, you could hear my words. But you are of your father, the devil. And he was a murderer from the beginning. So Jesus tells the Pharisees that they were of their father Cain, right? They intermarried with Canaanites. This whole bloodline was not according to the promise. Jesus came and he said, my sheep hear my voice. The true Israelites heard him and they followed him, right? Some followed him a little while, but when they heard Jesus speak, they left him. And Jesus said, they left us because they were never of us. This is already where the chaff and the wheat was separated. Yes, there were sheep there and there were goats there. And being a sheep or a goat was not a matter of what you believe. It was a matter of birthright that was given to Jacob and not to these Edomites who came from Esau. So the King James says, to the Jew first, then to the Greek. But in the right translation, it's talking about Jesus was baptized. He started his ministry and started to preach the gospel first to Judah, where some tribes lived, like Judahites, Benjamites, and a few of the other tribes. But this is where the gospel went first, because these Israelites were of his sheep. To the Judeans first, but not all Judeans were Israelites. Then to the nations, where the rest of the Israelites were the lost tribes. And after Jesus died, Paul took over this ministry and filled with the Spirit, he preached the gospel of reconciliation to the nations where the other Israelites were. Then God destroyed that old place. The temple was destroyed and the true Israelites entered the new covenant and they became the living temple of God. There was no more need for that temple built with stones. So what happened to these Edomite Jews? Well, they scattered away through the Roman Empire and most of them went into Spain. They are called the Sephardic Jews, which were essentially Edomites and Canaanites. But they were still of the white family, but they were in their mind and through their lineage not part of the new covenant. That's why many of the Sephardic Jews look white. If you look at Christopher Columbus, right? He didn't look Arab or anything. He was more or less white, even though there were already, I think, some mixing going on there. But when you see a modern day Jew, in the sense of how we view a Jew, is that they look Turkic or Arab. And these are not even Judeans, Edomite Judeans. These are other peoples who converted into Judaism. There were a lot of Turkic looking people in the Khazar Empire who in the 8th century converted to Judaism, right? But they also adopted this Babylonian spirit. So when we talk about Esau, the man Esau obviously is already long dead. But when we talk about Esau, we're talking about the descendants of Esau who carried the Babylonian spirit even to other people. But the people of Jacob who entered into the new covenant, they are to be a light to the world. So other races, either they follow you, right, because you are a priest, right, they adopt Christian values, or they're gonna adopt Babylonian world, the tradition of man. But you can imagine that Esau lost his birthright, and he hated the fact that Jacob entered into the new covenant and started to develop in Christian nations and Christian dominion. And these nations developed more and more. They wanted to have a part of it. Esau still hates Jacob. But Jacob for a long time rejected Esau and kept them out of their lands. And there was this man who came from a long line of Jewish rabbis who basically wrote down the philosophy, which is basically nothing more than Babylonianism, but we call it Marxism. Marxism is essentially anti-Jacob. God gave Jacob the dominion, but Esau comes up with the idea, no. Jacob cannot have the dominion. We will have the dominion. So we're going to tell everybody that it doesn't matter what religion or race you are, we are all equal. That is Karl Marx. This is not according to the plan of God. Even though there is still a blessing of Isaac, the father of Esau, on Esau, that he would have the dominion, but only for a little while. And we are now in that season where Esau is ruling us. It's called the short season of Satan, the short season of the adversaries. And now we even see that people of Jacob walked away from God and adopted the Babylonian spirit called Marxism. So this was the Bible story in a nutshell, but I wanted to do this introduction to understand the footage I'd like to show you about a Marxist professor and his idea about what should happen to the white race. I don't want to go into the history how the African Negro came about, but we see that they never even had a written language until a few hundred years ago after the Europeans went in. But this seems so politically incorrect that these Marxist professors have created a thing called Afrocentrism, right? Where they claim that the black people built the pyramids, the black people gave civilization to Europe, the black people were this and the black people are that, right? And we see that black people never had their own religion. That's why most black people in Africa, for example in Algeria, 80% is Muslim. And then you have Jewish black people and you have Christian black people. Black people choose a religion based on what they see fit for the benefit of themselves only. So quickly going back to Christopher Columbus, which was not his real name, he was an Edomite Jew and he did not leave on a ship to find new land. He went away the day that Queen Isabella set an ultimatum: either you convert to Catholicism or you leave. And Christopher Columbus and his entire crew was Edomite Jewish. And when he came in the Caribbean, he started to use people as slaves. Also, the whole slave trade was started, instigated and funded and mostly done by these Edomites. So now you end up with a whole slave trade out of Africa, buying these African slaves from other Africans, bringing them into North America, right? So they could have cheap labor. And by the way, not every white American had slaves. That's not true, right? But the thing is, now you bring a totally different race with no culture, with no background, right? They were still basically living in the Stone Age, and you could use them as cheap labor. But Abraham Lincoln, he didn't like slavery, so he abolished it. But at the same time, Abraham acknowledged the major differences between the white Christian people and the black Africans. So Abraham Lincoln wanted to bring them back to Africa. But most people, the black people, recognized we are free now, but we have a better chance of a future staying in America than going back to Africa. So there was a whole progression needed, right, from slave to free men. And now, do they have the same rights? Are they becoming citizens, right? Do they have the birthright if they make children here? There was a whole process. And it was only in 1965 that this whole idea of American birthright was changed into the law. But this was never the vision of the founding fathers. So slaves had children, and these children have children, and over the generations, Africans started to feel like Americans because they gradually became more and more westernized, so you cannot even relate anymore to their motherland. But they are free and they have everything they need. But it is not enough. Now they want to be the dominant race in America, right? And white people say, yeah, but we also want to have our own dominion in our God-given lands, right? But not according to Esau, who hates Jacob and put this Babylonian Marxist spirit also in the black people. They have used the black people against the children of Jacob. So lately I've been watching a lot of videos from Jared Taylor. He's a white man with an English background, and he wants to preserve the white culture, white history, and even the white people as a race. I'm not sure if he knows about the true Israelites and who they are, right? But people like Phil Donahue, a Jew, tried to trick him, going against the Jews, and I think he's just smart enough not to go there. That's the reason that a lot of people know Jared Taylor, and Chris Wiltham, that's me, is just a nobody because I don't have that filter. But anyway, Jared Taylor makes a good statement that as a race, as a people, it is very important to share a common history and a common spirit. Everything, you just feel happier, right? Because making a multicultural society that is just the biggest ingredient for unrest and stress for everybody, not just for the whites, also for the blacks. And we see that this whole multiculturalism is not benefiting our nation at all right? And Jared Taylor makes a lot of interesting, good points. I will share the video of this debate in the description box so you can watch the whole thing. But I want to share a little part of his opponent, a Marxist professor who is black mixed with, I think, white, I'm not sure. But you see, especially people who are already mixed don't care about mixing. Why would they? They're already mixed themselves, right? But you see that the idea of Esau is, and it is still the hate toward Jacob, that Jacob has the dominion, that the Marxists think that the end of racism will be after the white race is no more. Let me show you.
Some of the highest IQs in the world are found in Nigeria, Ghana, the West African states. Most Americans don't know that because most Americans can't place Canada on a map, but that is a fact. One of the highest earning groups in this country is Black West Indians. They look exactly like Black Americans, make more money than Caucasians. That would seem to defeat both theories of ongoing structural racism and theories of genetic racism, by the way, but I'm not going to go into either one of those right now. But essentially, my overall point is that Mr. Taylor is speaking to some extent in defense of a dying order. He is representing what he considers to be his people. Will whites go extinct? I don't think it's a relevant question. I think white culture, Beethoven and great art and so on, will continue to influence the world for 1,000 years, as will black culture, the pyramids and the like. But will there be people that have blonde hair and blue eyes in great numbers in Chicago, or that are pure Senegalese African in New York, by the end of my life? Probably not, and I think that's good. And I'd like to do something other than kind of yell back and forth here. I'd like to actually call some people up to the stage. Dr. Merlino can kind of shut me down here. But Crystal, in the front row, would you mind coming up? Jane, would you mind coming up? Aaron Gilliam.
I beg your pardon? Oh, no, they can come up if they wish. Sure.
All right, Aaron Gilliam. Plato, in the front row, would you mind coming up to the stage? Shy Heath, you in the room? Duncan Adams. Andy Teal, are you in the room? All right, let's see who else I wrote down. Katie Drake, you in the room? What about Daryl Pinto, you in the room?
What does this have to do with diversity, on the other hand?
Well, this is it. I'm gonna make a very simple point, then I'm gonna close here. So in order, I'd like kind of each of you guys to just walk up to the mic. It'll take maybe 5 seconds. Describe your ethnic background and something you think about yourself. All of you should come to this side of the stage.
You can.
And there's a point to this. I'm going to close. This won't take very long, but.
Aaron Gilliam. I'm African American. My father's from Bahamas, so I consider myself Bahamian and African American. I'm a history professor here. That's it. Kind of short here. Hi, I'm Crystal Conway Cunningham. I'm African American on both sides of my family, and I actually identify with lesbian, so that's even more diversity for you.
Hi, Jane Lingle, and I am, Irish, German, Scottish, English, Welsh, Cherokee, and Creole.
I'm Duncan Adams. I'm from the Appalachian area, and it's one of the most, economically poor areas in the country.
How you doing? My name is Shy Heath from Louisville, Kentucky, a graduating student. My major is psychology with a minor in biology, and I can say one thing about diversity is that we're all versatile as well.
My name is Plato Chukwu. I'm an African. I'm from the Republic of Liberia, and I have all of my families connected to the African heritage.
Hello, my name is Katie Drake. Both sides of my family are white. I'm from Palm Desert, California, and I strongly believe in diversity.
My name is Andrew Teal. I'm a senior at Kentucky State University. My background is Scottish, Irish, Polish, and Native American, and I'm a firm believer in diversity.
I will say, I actually did not expect those guys to go up and say things like, I'm a firm believer in diversity, although it's good to know. I wanted to illustrate a particular thing here, though. There are contrasting visions in our society about what America is. And I will say that at least for me, and we vote on these visions, and sometimes we fight for them. They're not ordained by God, but we each have ours, and we stand up for it. So this is, I suppose, my America. I prefer it, I think, to his. And I can virtually guarantee you that when the first human starship lands on an alien world, to trade or learn or make war, the people on it will look like this. They will not look like the people in Iceland or in Haiti. Well, those people are great too, and I encourage them in many cases to come to the United States of America. But in a very serious line from a joking movie, God bless America and every place else.